Oh yeah, Eric's. This hand's going to be interesting here. Now, I didn't run it through any type of solver because it's pretty
Mhm.
deep, right? But I'll give you my take on how I think your line is. It was probably the most interesting hand that I had emailed in so this week. So set it up.
Thanks, man. So basically, we're playing in an online home game. It's between me and another college friend.
Okay.
I'm 322 bigs deep. He's a little bit deeper, around 350. We're both in for like 400 total. Or there was another guy, but he left. We're both in for 400 total. And he opens up to 2.5 big blinds on the
Oh
button.
boy. By the way, what's the is this a small game? I mean, it's okay if it's small. It just might be easier for me if I can do it
Oh
the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
We're playing 0.51 and we're doing like kind of a heads up challenge.
What is it?
So,
What did you say again?
we were doing we're playing 0.51.
Oh,
So
so like
NL1.
50 cent a dollar.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. So fifty cent a dollar, like, oh, that's easy. So you're like $320 effective, something like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So I thought it was just easier to use big blinds because
No,
it's
it's going to
easier
be
to
easier to use
get out.
dollars at 50 cent a dollar.
Oh, my bad. Okay, my bad.
Yeah, yeah.
So he opens up to $2.5 and I three bet to $7.5 with
So
jacks.
so your heads up, this is a heads up hand?
Hmm.
Okay. All right. So I didn't realize that, but still okay. So then that would probably change my feeling at the end. So the guy's on the button, right? Villain one opens to 2.5
Hmm.
and you and hero has Jack Jack,
Yep. One diamond, one heart.
Jack of hearts, Jack of diamonds in the big blind. Three bets to 750. Okay.
Hmm. And he flats.
Okay. So
The flop comes nine of clubs, seven of hearts, five of hearts.
nine of clubs, seven of hearts, five of hearts. So the pot's like $15. By the way, I have to preface this. I did not realize this was a heads up call. I am by no means anywhere near a heads up expert. I haven't studied it much. I know that Doug Polk Negreanu match is going on. I also was somewhat surprised, and maybe this was just me being naive, that people thought that Doug was like a 4 or a 5 to 1 favorite. And I was like, they're not playing that many hands, right? I mean, Negreanu is like, he's been around for 15 years. He's one of the better live tournament guys, especially from like the old school. I mean, he's not an idiot. And I'm like, is Doug really that much of a favorite? And people were like, yeah, like if you get a good heads up guy, like they're just an enormous favorite. So that's
Yeah,
interesting to note. I mean, I'll do my best, but I did not know this was a heads up hand.
yeah, totally
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
So I've interesting you say that because I think the only studying I've really done is heads up, but only 100 bigs deep.
Uh huh.
So I'm pretty unfamiliar with this territory too. But I actually got Negreanu at 5.25 to 1 and 13 to 1.
You bought him
So
at 5.25 to 1.
yeah, when he was up 140K and I got him 13 to 1
So how is
before.
that match going now, by the way? I haven't really been following it.
Yeah, I think Doug's up like 500K, so he's up like 13 buy-ins or something. So
Is he
maybe
dominating or is he getting lucky or
I haven't really been watching the challenge because I have work obviously as well
uh-huh.
now.
Huh.
But I
Okay.
know he won a huge like 400K session. I caught some of the last session where like Negreanu coolered him with aces over kings and like when they were 300 bigs deep. But still, like I think he only coolered him for like 150 big blinds or something.
Okay.
So not even too bad.
So 975 with two hearts. I mean, obviously, like if you were playing a more full ring game and you had multiple callers, you might consider checking a board like this, some of the time. I can't imagine you would be doing that much checking heads up. It's certainly a bet call hand, I would think, even from
Right,
out of
right.
position, right?
So I think if we were playing six max here and I was out of position, I'd probably be checking a majority of the time, especially with a heart. I noticed that solvers really like to check like the aces with like the ace of hearts on this flop too.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd imagine it's pretty similar with jacks. Here though, my opponent's a little bit more of a loose guy. Like I've seen him in a full ring game go for like 600 bigs with like ace king, ace top pair. So the game's like fairly loose usually when we play, but Heads up, it's obviously a little bit like tight loose, if that makes sense.
Okay.
hmm so I bet eight bigs into 15 in the villain flats, which I think like makes quite a bit of sense.
By the way, just by what you were saying too, is that just as an aside too, I mean, this applies not only to heads up, but full ring, is that you're saying that the overpairs with the heart are a reflection of more checked. And that's, of course, because you can just continue to call across heart turns.
Yep,
But jacks is going to be a reflection more of a bet than aces
because
going
it's
down
like
the line, kings, queens,
yeah.
just because of protection issues,
Yep,
right?
yep.
Okay,
So
so
generally in these spots, I like in on the flop especially, I look to bet like 75% with like 75% of the time with jacks and maybe check like 75% of the time with aces with a heart versus jacks with a heart. And how I just like randomize this is I look at like the like my watch and where it is in seconds. So if it's like in the first 15 seconds, I like check or bet, depending on my
do you
frequency.
really do that, Eric? Do you
Yeah, I
really
actually do
randomize by
this.
looking at your watch?
Yeah, I think it's like a pretty smart way to like kind of randomize some frequencies every once in
By
a
the
while.
way, is it? I know that there was controversy that
Hmm?
Doug wanted to use some like pre-flop charts, and Daniel said no. Is it? Is it? You're not so RTA, which is like real-time assistance. Can you
hmm
is it? Can you use a randomizer? Like for example, could I have a stopwatch going on the side? If we said no RTA, would a stopwatch on the side that would help me randomize, like you were saying, would that be considered RTA?
No, I don't think that's like real-time assistance at all. Like even when I was in the like in casinos, right? I would do something like completely arbitrary. Like if the next guy is wearing a dark color, I'll like be betting here, and if like the guy's wearing a light color, I'll be like checking if I think it's like
Well,
a
that's a
pretty
new
good
one.
frequency spot. I think it's
I
a
don't know.
pretty
Maybe
smart method, man.
maybe I'm the
Like
only one that finds that hubris. No, I guess yeah. I mean, have you ever seen The Hunt for Red October, the movie?
no, I haven't. I
Oh,
think
they
am I too young for that?
the captain, the guy who like stormed the Russian submarine, bluffed Sean Connery by telling him that the Russian sub was going to do something because it was the bottom half of the hour. He was just making it up, but he ended up being correct. But anyways,
Yeah.
okay, 9752 hearts, pots 31. All right, what's the turn?
Turns the queen of clubs.
Queen of clubs. Okay.
So I think that this turn is actually like somewhat good in general for the three better, but because he's a little bit of a loose player, I also expect him to be floating on the flop sometimes with like king, queen, queen, jack, ace, queen. And I think I should be betting here some of the time as well, but checking here as like some of the time. Um, I expect that like here the solver is probably checking more frequently. What do you think, Bart? Or would you be checking here more frequently?
Well, like I said, listen, I'm not a like I said, I'm not a heads up expert in a spot like this. Usually, you're not going to see king queens and queen jacks defended offsuit in some of the stuff that I'm more familiar with, like in full ring. But if it is
hmm
defended heads up this deep, then yeah, I mean, obviously, like some of those hands would be called, I guess, on a flop with a heart in it. Like he's not supposed to be calling with like queen of spades, like jack of diamonds, I'm sure, or something like that. Again, I would tend to say though that because this is a blank and you block, some of the queen jacks, right? You block queen jack of hearts. So because it's a disconnected blank, I would tend to think that I would continue to bet here to get value. Like this is not as good as a deuce, but I don't see a reason not to. I think I would be betting here more than checking.
Interesting. I thought that my the person I was playing against was like kind of aggressive, especially in position. So I wanted to kind of strengthen my check range as well to include jacks, ace queen, king queen, even some strong draws as well.
Well,
So I
but
wanted to
let
play
me just. I understand what you're saying, but let me stop you right there, though. I think that this is sometimes where people go a little bit of a awry with this concept. Is that I can get on board with what you're saying, right? Especially
Mhm.
if the turn was like a deuce, but when you think of the traditional good barrel cards for you, if you didn't have a pair, right, it would be high disconnected cards that would change top pair, that would give like a seven or a five, like now third or fourth pair. So
Mhm.
a queen would be one of those cards. So how often are you c-betting this flop as the three better and then check folding a disconnected high offsuit card? I feel like you'd have more barreled bluffs here, a lot more barrel bluffs than check folds. So that would make me want to be balanced with some of the, like, a merge sort of value here on the turn. Do you follow what I'm saying? Like, when are you check folding here after betting this flop as a three better on a queen turn?
Right. I think that specifically check folds, I would only be, I think that the only hands I would be looking to check fold are going to be like some of my lower suited connectors. I even thought maybe, I think I would want to be barreling with like king jack, ace king, ace queen,
Sure.
some of the times as well, jacks, queen jack some of the time as well.
Right.
And mostly wanted to play as a, I didn't want my check range to always be check fold, so I wanted to move some of my betting hands into check calls as well. I know I've seen your video about how like check call is a losing play in
Well, not on the turn. Of course I check call
oh,
on the
on the
turn.
river.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. I mean, and it's different heads up too. It's,
Mhm.
check call is a losing play in loose live stakes games when you're playing against typical patterns of players, not in a heads up match where you guys are trying to like duel it out. So that's entirely different. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
anyways, all right. So you check, and what happens? Here are checks.
He bets $37 into 31.
So he overbets the pot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would think that you have to call here, right? You've got to
Right,
call.
right. So
Although what's interesting here is that I remember when I used to do solver work with Colin over on Top Section, is that you would rather have a hand with additional equity here than jacks, in the sense that your villain is starting to polarize.
mhm.
So I would assume that you would rather have a hand like 9-8 or even 7-8 or maybe even 7-6 here. Now, it depends on, obviously there's a factor of like random overcards can come too. They can sometimes beat you. Like if he's barreling with some sort of straight draw with 10x, he has equity over like 7-6, right?
Right.
But what I learned from when I used to do that work is that it's not all about the absolute hand value, and especially when your opponent takes a polarizing turn size, that you would actually sometimes want to select the hands that can improve. Obviously, jacks can't really improve here, right?
Right, right. I
Yeah.
think that if I fold jacks, I might be folding a little bit too much.
I'm not
I
saying to
think
fold
that
jacks. I'm just saying,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Like,
I
would you
think if
rather have 9-8 here or jacks, or 7-8 or seven
right.
six?
I think if it were just like say uh even like the deuce of like diamonds on the river and he bets, right? Sometimes it could be better to call off with like specific hands that block like some straights too, um, than like jacks. But I think that this is like a pretty merged spot in general, right? Would you say like on the river a two diamonds game? Would you rather call off with 9-8 or jacks? Is would be my question to you.
Well, usually is, well, if it's a, again, if he chooses a like a large sizing, then yeah, you're going to be looking for hands that block the portion of value that would take that sizing. So those would be the ones that usually would block some very, very thick value hands, right?
Right.
So those would probably be the ones that would contain like an 8, or something like that. So
Yeah.
the pot's 105, you check call. Okay. So now the river.
And the river comes the 10 of hearts, and I check once more, and the villain bets nearly pot, so 100 bigs into 105. And here I think I'm presented with like a pretty interesting spot. Like, obviously, I think, or I thought all three options were on the table. I thought jamming was kind of interesting. Um, I thought a call could sometimes be reasonable because I do block some value hands. Like, say he went off with like jack eight of hearts, just some random like even king jack that turned into kind of a bluff, or was looking for some sort of like geometric sizing on like the turn. If they get there, they overbet. I thought,
Geometric sizing, huh?
yeah, yeah,
I
kind
think
of like a
that's gonna be the
parallelism.
title of this video. Geometric sizing. Let me ask you a question. So you say that all three options are available. to you.
Mhm.
Obviously, call and fold. But if you look at the option of check raising the river here, obviously as a bluff, what hands do you think that you are getting better to fold that would take this line?
So I think that some hands that I would perhaps be folding, or that some people might be folding, are some awkward two pairs that were overly aggressive on the river, even some sets. Um, I think that 8-6 has to be a call, right? Even the bottom end of the straight. But two pairs and sets are really what I'm trying to target here.
Really, do you think a set is going to fold here? I mean, I know the heart has come in, but again, I just, like I said, listen, I am by no, I thought when you called this in, what I was going to say is I thought this was a ring game. And I was like,
Mhm.
thinking about check raising the river here, obviously it's an entirely different dynamic. I was like, usually, live players aren't going to bet like thin hands for value, like two pair here. So when they do bet, if they are polarized, the jacks might actually turn into more of a call than a check raise at the end. And then I said, well, I thought to myself when I was reading the email, like it looks kind of like a weird line, like you're checking a flush when you make it, to check jam. I don't know if I would be, am I, to fold a set, I would have to think that you weren't barreling turn with some heart draws, right? Or weren't barreling turn with King Jack, which you said earlier in the call you probably would, right? King Jack as a straight.
Mhm.
So I don't know, I would seem to have a hard time folding a set here. Now, maybe I could be entirely wrong. This is just my thinking. So that's why, like I said, it seems like maybe your hand might be played better as a call on the surface as opposed to a jam. That's why I said, what do you think you are going to get to, fold out here? The two pairs would be what, like flopped two pairs? Like, I don't think that 9-10 would necessarily take this turn sizing, right? Like a run into like 9-10, or he would have to float with like queen 10 with a heart in it, with the queen of hearts in it. Is it taking, is queen 10, if you're floating heads up with two overcards and you hit top pair and you're check two, are you supposed to bet this type of sizing on the turn on this board? I don't know the answer to that. I mean, that's what I'm just trying to figure out, the two pair here. What's the two pair that gets here like this?
Right. So when I was analyzing the spot, obviously making like a decision in real time, right? What I was thinking of was 7-5 is a reasonable combo, right? 9-5 because he's loose enough. 9-7 makes sense as well. Queen 9 makes sense, right? Kind of like floating with Queen 10 makes sense. So turning a queen and then betting slightly larger, thinking that my check range is a little bit weaker, and barreling larger on like the turn to try and get extra value, right? And on the river, making two pair like Queen 9, Queen 10, even Queen 7. And I thought all of those hands would be in a pretty awkward position, especially against the jam. I think that betting like 100 into 105 with two pair or sets kind of puts you in slightly a weirder position because, say, like, you know, or when I like do jam here and say that like in a looser or in a pretty low stakes game, people generally have it here, right? So like,
I just, like I said, I don't know what the theoretical
mhm.
answer for is, what he's supposed to call with and what he's supposed to fold. If you're saying that you think it's right for him to fold queen 9, queen 10 and some of the two pairs, maybe I can get on board with it. When you start to say sets, I start to be like, and then again, like where I come from, where I say maybe a call fits in better than a check raise is that how thin is he going at the end? Is it going to be fairly strong hands, and is he even bet folding those? What did you end up doing?
So I ended up jamming 270 bigs or so, and he tank folds.
Did you find out what he had?
He claims that he tank folded a bluff, but generally people don't tank fold bluffs, or he's never tank folded a bluff before. He like generally snap folds if I jam on him and he's like bluffing, but he claims he tank folded a bluff. So
Well, I
he
mean, that
would,
doesn't,
yeah,
just because it was a bluff that time doesn't necessarily mean it wasn't the right play. But I,
right.
I, I want to move along. So tell me about your thing that you had emailed me real quick. I'll give it a plug.
Yeah, so basically a couple of my friends and I started Lee Poker, which is a
LIO.
lipoker.io, and it's just an easy, convenient way of like playing poker with friends without having to sign up or do any downloads. There's a
So is it like
tournament mode.
a web-based applet or something like that?
Yeah, it's a web page that you can go on and just play poker with your friends. You don't have to sign up, don't have to download anything. You can just send a link and play a private game.
And then can
We
you
hope,
set like chip sizes and stuff too? Like you
yep,
could
you
just
can
give
set
issue
chip
people
sizes.
chip sizes?
Yep, you can set the blinds, you can set a timer. We have a tournament mode. We're bringing like teacher mode on where there's an interactive platform for you to teach your friends poker. And we're bringing public lobbies so you can play games with like people all over the world just randomly for like play money. We're trying to add some training features with like Poker Solver Plus and a couple other like training sites so that we can bring some sort of analysis and lines so you can continuously improve as well. But we also made a custom link for you, bart.leepoker.io, in case you ever want to use it for private games in the future, man.
Ah, Bart dot leepoker.io. Oh, I'll check it out. So can it be a cash game too, or is it just tournaments?
Yeah, so we support cash and tournaments.
All right, I'll check it out. I'll definitely check it out for sure. Solver Plus, I've talked about that, brought it into my podcast and stuff like that, where these guys from Crafty Wheel, that is like sort of shortcut solving and pre-solved scenarios. The interesting thing about it is it's limited because it's sort of new, and if you don't do something, like I tried to analyze a guy's hand with Solver Plus the other day where he didn't four bet kings. I think maybe it was on the Collins show a couple weeks ago, right? Like it always has him four betting kings and a six max, and he didn't, but that's not an option, right? Like I had to put in that he had queens,
Right.
because it's all pre-solved. But what I like about their stuff is post flop plus is good training too for GTO stuff. But leepoker.io, I'll check it out. Thanks, Eric. Thanks for the call. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Great to hear from you.
All right. If you like what you've seen here, please hit the subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this call in hand, hit the like button down below. To check out crushlivepoker.com, click on the link in the description. Use the code YTA300 to get the first 30 days for free.